I don't remember the exact moment I realized I was optional in my own family. It wasn't one dramatic event. It was more like waking up slowly, over years, to a truth that had always been there. My sister Abigail was born when I was 3. I have a single memory from before her arrival, sitting in my mother's lap while she read to me, her chin resting on top of my head. After Abigail came, that feeling never returned. Not because my mother was cruel. She just redirected, like a plant, turning toward better light. Abigail was an easy baby. I was told this often, as if it explained something. She smiled at strangers. She slept through the night by 6 weeks. When she started school, teachers loved her immediately. She had this way of tilting her head when adults spoke, like she was genuinely fascinated by their stories about gardening or local politics. I was a quiet child. Not shy, exactly. Just internal. I liked puzzles, books with detailed illustrations, organizing my collections of rocks and bottle caps by color and size. My parents didn't discourage this. They simply didn't notice. When I showed my mother a particularly smooth piece of lake glass I'd found, she'd say, "That's nice, sweetie," without looking up. At family dinners, Abigail would recount her day in elaborate detail, the drama with her friend group, a funny thing her teacher said, her worries about an upcoming recital. Everyone leaned in. My father would laugh. My mother would offer advice. When I mentioned getting a perfect score on my science test, my mother would nod and say, "Good job," before turning back to Abigail to ask about her costume for the school play. I learned to stop mentioning things. Our extended family treated us the same way. At Christmas gatherings, my grandmother would pull Abigail onto her lap and stroke her hair while Abigail told stories. I'd sit nearby with a book. Once, my uncle asked what I was reading. Before I could answer, Abigail interrupted with a question about his new truck, and he turned to her, forgetting I'd been speaking. I wasn't mistreated. I want to be clear about that. I had food, clothes, a bedroom. My parents came to my school events when required. But there's a specific loneliness in being physically present and emotionally unseen. It's not the same as being abandoned. It's more like being a piece of furniture someone passes every day without really registering. In middle school, I started spending time at the public library after school. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, was probably in her 60s. She noticed I came in every Tuesday and Thursday. She started setting aside books she thought I'd like: biographies of scientists, guides to local wildlife, photography collections. One Thursday, she asked if I'd help her digitize the library's old newspaper archive. It was tedious work, but I loved it. Scanning each page, organizing files, creating metadata. She paid me a small hourly rate from some community grant. More importantly, she talked to me like my thoughts mattered. When I suggested a better filing system, she implemented it. When I asked why she'd chosen library science, she told me the real answer, not a simplified version for a child. Through high school, I kept working at the library. Mrs. Chen taught me basic database management, then more advanced systems. I learned HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript, because I wanted to build a better interface for the archive. I wasn't trying to become anything specific. I just liked solving problems that had clean solutions. Abigail was thriving in her own way. She made the varsity volleyball team as a sophomore. She dated a senior who everyone agreed was going places. She got into our state university on a partial scholarship for leadership. My parents threw her a graduation party with 70 guests. I also got into a university, a smaller technical school, 2 hours away. My parents said they were proud, the same way you'd say, "Bless you," after someone sneezes. Automatic, polite, meaningless. I moved into the dorms with one suitcase and my laptop. My roommate went home most weekends. I stayed. I took extra shifts at the campus IT help desk. I joined a research group, studying database optimization. My professor, Dr. Rahman, had worked at several major tech companies before burning out and returning to teaching. She saw something in the way I approached problems: methodical, patient, persistent. In my junior year, she connected me with a former colleague who was launching a startup focused on archival systems for hospitals. They needed someone who understood both the technical architecture and the human workflow, how nurses and doctors actually used systems under pressure, not how they were supposed to use them in theory. I started as a part-time contractor. By graduation, I was full-time. By 25, I was leading a team of 4. We weren't building something flashy. We were building something that worked. Hospitals started recommending us to other hospitals. Revenue grew steadily. I didn't tell my family much about any of this. When I came home for holidays, they'd ask, "How's work?" the way people ask, "How was traffic?" Just filling space. I'd say, "Fine," or "busy," and that would be enough. The conversation would turn to Abigail's new apartment, her promotion to assistant manager at the hotel where she worked, her boyfriend's plan to propose. I bought a small house when I was 27. Just a 2-bedroom bungalow near the lake, with good light and a quiet street. I furnished it slowly, carefully. I learned to cook properly. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a calm orange tabby who liked to sleep in the sun. Mrs. Chen came to visit once. She walked through my house, touching things gently: the bookshelf I'd built, the herbs growing on the kitchen windowsill, the framed photograph I'd taken of the lake at dawn. She didn't say much, but before she left, she hugged me hard and whispered, "You did this all yourself. Don't forget that." At work, the company kept growing. We were acquired by a larger health tech firm when I was 29. The acquisition terms were good, very good. My shares in the company suddenly had actual value, the kind of value that meant I could stop worrying about mortgage payments or car repairs. Not wealthy, but secure, comfortable, free. I still didn't mention it to my family. What would I say? They'd never asked what I did exactly. They knew I worked with computers in some vague way. That seemed sufficient for them. Before we continue, if you're finding Claire's story resonating with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or questioned your worth because of how others treated you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Family SETI's 20 Months channel. Your support helps us share more stories like this, stories about quiet strength and the long journey toward knowing your own value. Thank you. Now, back to Claire's story. The exposure happened at my cousin's wedding. I hadn't wanted to go, but my mother had called personally to ask, which was rare enough that I felt obligated to say yes. The wedding was elaborate, a restored barn venue, string lights, a catered dinner for 200 people. I sat at a table with extended family I barely knew. Abigail was at the head table, of course. She'd been asked to give a toast as the bride's favorite cousin. During cocktail hour, I was standing near the bar when a woman approached me. Mid-40s, confident posture, expensive but understated jewelry. "Claire O'Neill?" she asked. I nodded. "I thought that was you. I'm Rebecca Larson. I work in procurement at County General. Your team installed our new record system last year." She smiled warmly. "I've been telling everyone who'll listen that you saved our department. The old system was a nightmare. What you built actually makes sense." We talked for a few minutes about the project. She mentioned they were expanding to 3 more locations and wanted to use our system there too. She asked about my team, about future developments. Professional talk, but genuine. I noticed my mother standing a few feet away, holding a glass of wine, her face completely still, not angry, not proud, just frozen, processing. After Rebecca moved away, my mother came closer. "I didn't know you worked on something like that," she said carefully. "You never asked." She blinked. "Well, it's not like you talk about work much." "That's true," I said, and excused myself to use the restroom. When I came back, I could feel something had shifted. My father approached me with questions about my job that felt oddly formal, like he was interviewing me. An aunt I'd barely spoken to in years wanted to know where I lived, whether I liked my house, if I decorated it myself. At dinner, Abigail leaned across two people to ask loudly, "So, when were you going to tell us you're some kind of tech genius?" "I'm not," I said. "I just do my job. Rebecca made it sound like you're a big deal." I shrugged. Rebecca's nice. But I could see Abigail's expression, confusion, mixed with something else, something that looked almost like offense, as if my competence was a personal betrayal. After the wedding, my phone started ringing more often. My mother called to ask about my week. My father sent articles about technology trends with messages like, "Thought you might find this interesting." Abigail texted me photos of her cat with comments like, "Miss you. We should hang out soon." At first, I was cautious. But humans are wired to hope. And I had been hoping for this, for them to see me for my entire life. When Abigail suggested a sister's lunch, I said yes. We met at a cafe halfway between our cities. She asked about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. She told me about her struggles with her boyfriend, how she wasn't sure if he was ready to commit, how she felt stuck in her job. I listened. I offered thoughts. It felt almost normal. She started calling more regularly. We fell into a pattern Sunday evening phone calls, where she'd vent about her week, and I'd offer perspective. My parents invited me to dinner. Not for a holiday, just dinner. My mother made my favorite pasta dish, which surprised me because I hadn't realized she remembered what my favorite was. "We're so proud of you," my father said over dessert. "We always knew you were smart, but this is really something." I wanted to ask why they'd never said so before, but I didn't. I just said thank you. The first request came from Abigail. Her boyfriend had proposed, and they were planning a wedding. "Nothing fancy," she said. "Just family and close friends, probably like 80 people." She was excited, talking fast, describing the venue she'd found. Then, more quietly, "The thing is, it's a little more expensive than we thought. And Mom and Dad are already helping with the deposit. I just wondered if, you're doing so well, and I know you probably have some savings." She didn't name an amount. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Maybe 5,000? I know it's a lot. I wouldn't ask if we weren't family." I sent her the money that week. She called me crying, thanking me, saying she'd pay me back as soon as they got settled after the honeymoon. I never expected her to pay me back. It felt good to help. It felt like being part of something. 2 months later, my father called. The roof on their house needed repairs. Major repairs. The contractor had quoted $12,000. They were looking into loans, but the interest rates were brutal. "We wouldn't normally ask," he said. "But Abigail mentioned you'd helped with the wedding, and we thought." I sent the money. My mother sent a thank you card, handwritten. She said I was generous and thoughtful, that they were lucky to have a daughter like me. I put the card on my refrigerator. Abigail started inviting me to things: shopping trips, her bachelorette weekend, family dinners. I was included now. It felt like I'd finally found the door I'd been searching for my whole childhood. All I'd needed was the right key. The wedding was beautiful. Abigail asked me to be a bridesmaid. At the last minute, one of her friends had dropped out. I bought the dress, attended the rehearsal, stood at the altar. In the photos, I'm smiling. I meant it. At the reception, my mother introduced me to her friends as my daughter Claire, who works in technology, very successful. I heard pride in her voice, real pride. I felt warm from my chest to my fingertips. For about a year, I had the family I'd always wanted. We did holidays together. Abigail and her husband came to my house for dinner sometimes. My mother asked for my opinion on things: what color to paint the living room, whether she should take a part-time job. My father sent me jokes via email. The kind that aren't funny, but that you laugh at anyway because the gesture matters more than the content. I helped Abigail move into a bigger apartment. I loaned my parents money for a new car when theirs broke down. I paid for my mother's medical bills when she needed a minor surgery, and their insurance didn't cover everything. Each time they thanked me. Each time I felt necessary, seen, valuable. I started skipping work events to attend family dinners. I turned down a consulting opportunity in another state because it would have meant missing Abigail's birthday party. My team at work noticed I seemed distracted, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere outside of my own head. Dr. Rahman checked in with me once during this period. We got coffee, and she asked how I was doing. I told her about my family, how things had gotten better, how close we'd become. She nodded slowly. "That's wonderful, Claire. I'm glad." Then, after a pause, "Just make sure you're not giving more than you're getting back. You have a tendency to undervalue yourself." I laughed it off. "I'm fine, really. Things are good." She didn't push, but I remember the look in her eyes, concerned, but resigned, like she'd said what she could and now had to let me learn on my own. I found out the truth at a family barbecue. My uncle, the one with the truck who'd forgotten I was speaking all those years ago, was hosting. It was a warm Saturday in July. Burgers on the grill, kids running through a sprinkler, coolers full of beer and soda. I'd arrived early to help set up. I was in the kitchen slicing vegetables when I heard voices from the back porch. My mother and my aunt, Abigail's godmother. "I still can't believe how much she's helped," my aunt said. "You must be so relieved." "Oh, completely," my mother replied. "I mean, it's not like we planned it this way, but once we realized she had money, it just made sense. Why struggle with loans when she can afford it? And she doesn't seem to mind?" "Not at all. I think she's just happy to finally be useful to the family." My hand stopped moving. The knife hovered over a tomato. "Does she know how much you're planning to ask for next?" My mother laughed, a light, casual sound. "Not yet. We're trying to figure out the best way to bring it up. Abigail thinks she should do it, since they're closer now." Claire responds better to her. "Smart. Abigail has always been better with people." "Always," my mother agreed. "Claire's brilliant with computers or whatever she does, but she doesn't really understand how relationships work. It's kind of perfect, actually. She gets to feel important, and we get help when we need it. Everyone wins." I set the knife down carefully. I walked outside through the front door, got in my car, and drove home. I didn't block anyone. I didn't send angry messages. I just stopped. When Abigail called on Sunday, I didn't answer. When she texted asking if I was okay, I replied, "Busy with work. Talk soon." When my father sent an article, I didn't respond. When my mother called to invite me to dinner, I said I had plans. She asked, "What plans?" I said, "Just plans. Thanks for thinking of me." The first week, they seemed to accept this. The second week, the calls became more frequent. The third week, Abigail showed up at my house. I let her in. We sat in my living room. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, even though she'd been there a dozen times before. "Are you mad at us?" she asked. "No." "Then why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird. I'm just busy." "With what?" "Work. Life. Things." She frowned. "You're never too busy for family." "Sometimes I am," I said. She studied me for a long moment, then carefully. "Is this about money? Because if we ask for too much, you should have just said, 'We didn't mean to take advantage.'" There it was. The word advantage. "I know you didn't mean to," I said quietly. "So, can we still count on you for the down payment?" I looked at her, really looked. She was beautiful, just like she'd always been. But there was something else now, something in the tightness around her mouth, the calculation in her eyes. She was doing math, figuring out how to get me back on board. "No," I said. "No? No. You can't count on me for that." Her face shifted through several expressions. confusion, frustration, anger, before landing on hurt. I can't believe you do this to us. After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me? I asked, not cruelly, genuinely curious. She stood up. We welcomed you back into the family. We included you. Mom and Dad were so happy when you started coming around again. I never left the family, Abigail. I was always there. You just didn't notice until I had something you wanted. She stared at me. Then she grabbed her purse and left. My mother called the next day. She was calm, reasonable. She said families help each other. She said she was disappointed in me for pulling away over something so small. I heard what you said, I told her, at the barbecue, about me being useful. Silence. Then, you took that out of context. What's the context where it means something different? Claire, don't be dramatic. You know what I meant. I do know, I said. That's the problem. She tried a different approach. We're your family. We love you. You love what I can do for you. That's not fair. Okay, I said. And then I didn't say anything else. The silence stretched. She was waiting for me to apologize, to back down, to smooth things over the way I always had. I have to go, I said finally. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable, she replied, and hung up. Days passed, then weeks. No one apologized. No one acknowledged what I'd heard or how it might have hurt me. Instead, I got messages about how I was being selfish, immature, ungrateful. Ungrateful. For what? Exactly? I wasn't sure. I decided to go to one last family dinner. My mother had invited me for my father's birthday. It would mean a lot to him, she said. Whatever issues you're having with us, he doesn't deserve to be punished. She was right about that. My father had been passive in my childhood, but not actively unkind. So I went. The dinner was tense. Abigail and her husband were there. My parents. My aunt. Everyone was too polite. Voices too bright. After we ate, my mother brought out the cake. We sang. My father blew out the candles. Then my mother said, Claire, we need to talk about this situation. Okay, we think you're overreacting. Families ask each other for help. That's normal. It is, I agreed. But I'm not upset that you asked for help. Then what's the problem? The problem is that you only wanted me around when I had something to give. My father frowned. That's not true. When's my birthday? I asked him. He hesitated. June? October. October 15th. I'm 32. Well, I'm not good with dates. You remembered Abigail's birthday last month. You threw her a surprise party. No one said anything. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just done pretending this is something it's not. We're your family, my mother said. You can't just walk away from family. I can, actually. And I am. I stood up. Abigail's husband looked uncomfortable. My aunt was staring at her plate. Abigail herself looked furious. You're going to regret this, Abigail said. When you're alone and you realize money can't replace family, don't come crying to us. I won't, I said. I thanked my father for dinner and left. 3 months later, I got a call from my bank. There had been an attempt to open a credit card in my name. The application had been flagged because it included employment information that didn't match their records. I pulled my credit report. Someone had tried to take out a personal loan as well. Both applications listed my mother's address as my residence. I filed a police report. I froze my credit. I called my mother. Did you try to open a credit card in my name? I asked. Long pause. We were desperate. The roof repairs didn't fix everything. There's water damage. We needed. Did you try to open a credit card in my name? We would have paid it back. I hung up. The police investigation went nowhere. My mother claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she'd thought she was helping me consolidate my credit, that she'd had permission. It was her word against mine, and there was no proof of intent to defraud. The case was closed, but I knew. And they knew I knew. I changed my phone number. I blocked them on all social media. I put alerts on my credit. I wrote a letter to my family, not angry, just clear, explaining that I would not be in contact anymore, that any attempts to reach me would be ignored, and that any further financial manipulation would result in legal action. I sent the letter certified mail, so I'd have proof of delivery. Dr. Rahman helped me find a therapist. I started going weekly. It was hard, excavating all of it, the years of feeling invisible, the brief hope that things had changed, the crushing realization that I'd been right all along. My therapist asked me once if I wanted revenge. No, I said. I just want to be free. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They are for me. I threw myself into work. Our company was developing a new system for integrating patient data across multiple hospitals in a region. It was complex, important work. I led the project. We launched successfully. I got promoted to director. I started running in the mornings. I joined a community garden. I took a photography class and discovered I was decent at it. I made a few friends, quiet people like me, people who didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. My life became smaller and also bigger. Fewer people, but deeper connections. Less noise, more substance. Mrs. Chen passed away 2 years after I cut off my family. I spoke at her memorial. I told the room full of strangers that she'd saved my life by seeing me when no one else had, that she'd taught me I was worth more than my usefulness. Her daughter gave me a box of things Mrs. Chen had saved, letters I'd written to her over the years, photographs from the library, a framed picture of the two of us at my college graduation. I hadn't known Mrs. Chen had attended, but there we were, standing outside the auditorium, both smiling. I put the photo on my mantle. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. I wasn't sure I knew how to let someone close without fearing they'd only want me for what I could provide. My therapist said that was normal, that trust takes time to rebuild. I bought a kayak and started going out on the lake at dawn. The water was silent, except for the sound of my paddle. The sky turned pink and gold. I was alone, but not lonely. My career continued to grow. I spoke at conferences. I published articles about database ethics and patient privacy. I mentored younger engineers, especially women who reminded me of myself, competent, quiet, unsure of their own value. One of them, Sarah, asked me once how I'd gotten so confident. I laughed. I'm not confident. I'm just done pretending. I need permission to exist. 5 years after I walked away, I ran into my aunt at a grocery store, the one from the barbecue. She looked older, tired. She saw me and hesitated, like she wasn't sure if she should approach. I didn't walk away. I just waited. "Claire," she said finally, "how are you?" "I'm well." "You?" "Good, fine." She shifted her weight. "I thought you should know your mother's not doing great, health-wise. She had a minor stroke last year. She's okay, but it scared everyone." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted to reconcile, just because I didn't wish suffering on anyone. "She asks about you sometimes, wonders how you're doing." "I'm sure she does." My aunt looked at me closely. "You seem different." "I am. Happier." "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Abigail's struggling. Her marriage didn't work out. She's back living with your parents. It's been hard for her." "I'm sorry to hear that too. Would you ever consider—" "No," I said gently. "I wouldn't. She absorbed this. They miss you. They miss what I provided. That's not the same thing." She didn't argue. We stood there for a moment in the produce section, two people who'd once shared holidays and barbecues, now strangers. "Take care of yourself, Claire. You too." I finished my shopping and went home. I felt sad, but not conflicted. Sad the way you feel when you hear about anyone going through hardship. But it didn't change anything. Last month, I was cleaning out a closet and found a box from my childhood. Inside was a drawing I'd made in second grade. It was a family portrait stick figures, holding hands. I'd labeled each one: Mom, Dad, Abigail, and off to the side, smaller, almost outside the frame, me. Even then, I'd known. I almost threw it away. But then I looked at it differently. That little girl hadn't drawn herself outside the circle because she believed she didn't belong. She'd drawn herself there because she already understood she was separate, different, and she'd been okay with it. She'd been sitting there with her rocks and her bottle caps and her library books, building something of her own. She hadn't needed them to see her. She just needed to see herself. I kept the drawing, but I folded it and put it in a different box, not one I'd look at often, but one I'd know was there if I ever needed the reminder. People talk about forgiveness like it's something you owe to others, like holding a boundary is the same as holding a grudge. But I've learned that you can release anger without opening the door again. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can acknowledge that people did the best they could with who they were and still decide that their best wasn't good enough for you. I don't hate my family. I just don't need them anymore. And maybe I never did. Maybe what I needed was to stop waiting for permission to value myself, to stop measuring my worth by whether people who never really looked at me could finally see what had been there all along. I'm not invisible. I never was. I was just early.